to move the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for your guidance. Mr. Speaker, I rise before you today with a sense of gratitude and appreciation for the opportunity to speak to this greatly esteemed August House. The Debate Committee on Finance and National Planning has fulfilled its mandate as outlined in Standing Order number 245 by examining and assessing the Finance Bill of 2024.
Chairman, start by moving the bill. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that the finance bill now be read a second time. Then you go on with your...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the Finance Bill of 2024 be now read a second time.
Excellent. Now you can proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I rise before you today with a sense of gratitude and appreciation for the opportunity to speak to this greatly esteemed August House. The Debate Committee on Finance and National Planning has fulfilled its mandate as outlined in Standing Order 245 by examining and accessing the Finance Bill of 2024. Honorable Speaker, the procedure commenced with a comprehensive briefing on the bill's substance, followed by interactions with diverse stakeholders who share their viewpoints. Subsequently, the committee carefully deliberated upon the stakeholders' comments vis-a-vis the provisions of the bill. Honorable Speaker, I would like to greatly thank the members of the public, and especially the ones who appeared before the departmental committee as stakeholders, the members of the public that came for a public hearing at KICC and gave us very, very insightful views that has improved the report on the Finance Bill of 2024. Honorable Speaker, in a very special way, although these people breached the Data Protection Act by sharing our numbers to Kenyans, but also thank Kenyans that wrote to us through SMSs, that called us, and some of them, Honorable Speaker, were generous enough to send us 1 shilling and 2 shilling and 10 shillings to confirm whether our numbers were authentic. Honorable Speaker, I have written to the clerk wondering what to do with the 168,000 shillings that have been sent to my M-Pesa, because receiving these gifts from members of the public, Honorable Speaker, is against the laws of this republic. And therefore, later I will be seeking your guidance on what to do with the money, because I tried reversing the 1 shilling and the 2 shilling, and it was impossible, because it came in hundreds of thousands. But for your generosity, Kenyans, I want to thank you and tell you that your views are well received. Mr. Speaker, I would like to draw your attention to an important issue concerning Kenyans' tax revenue collection. Over the past decade, our tax revenue as a share of GDP has remained stagnant at approximately 15%. This stagnation is a cause for concern, and we as a country need to develop favorable tax measures to balance between relying on our own social resource mobilization and depending on debt. Honorable Speaker, this bill proposes to raise a total of 346 billion shillings to support the expenditures that will better be passed by this House through the appropriations bill, Honorable Speaker. Notably, this expenditure is going to lead to the highest allocation ever to county governments at 401 billion shillings. This is the first time, Honorable Speaker, that this allocation to counties through equitable shares is exceeding the 400 billion shillings mark. Honorable Speaker, in as much as this House debates about raising revenue for this country, I want to encourage our members in our sister house, the Senate, and our county assemblies and our county governments to also prioritize ways of raising their own source revenue as county governments. Honorable Speaker, I would specifically want to laud Embu, Murang'a, and Nakuru counties that have exceeded their own source revenue share, because once counties are able to generate their own source revenue, it reduces the pressure that the national government has in collecting revenues to be sent to counties for conduction of county functions through the equitable share. Mr. Speaker, in comparison to African countries, tax revenue as a percentage of GDP, such as Botswana, is at 24%, Mauritius at 18%, and Zambia at 17%. Kenya is lying behind with a tax revenue collection of 14.1% as of 2022. These countries have managed to achieve higher tax revenue collection rates, which highlights the need for us to reassess our tax policies and explore more effective measures that favor the business environment and enhance revenue collection. The Kenyan government has embarked on a tax reform agenda through the medium-term revenue strategies, MTRS, aiming to increase the tax to GDP ratio to 25% by 2030. This reform is crucial for aligning Kenya with its regional peers and ensuring sustainable economic growth through improved domestic resource mobilization. Honorable Speaker, the reason why there is increased debate on taxation in this country is because we have 20% of Kenyans contributing to 80% of our taxes. That means there is a need to have a robust expansion of our tax base and ensure that if everyone in this country pays their equitable share of taxes, then we will not have to weigh this on the 20% that are paying 80% of our taxes in this country. Mr. Speaker, I would like to highlight a significant aspect of Kenya's economy over the past decade. We have witnessed the emergence of employment opportunities, especially around the digital marketplace, significantly this contributing to a significant economic evolution. Furthermore, the majority of jobs created during this period have been in the informal sector. As of 2022, approximately 83.3% of the 19.15 million Kenyans workers have been employed in the informal sector, reflecting the crucial role of the informal sector in our economy. This shows the importance of developing policies and strategies to support and regulate and support this vital segment. Mr. Speaker, the Finance Bill of 2024 had several tax proposals that would enable this country to increase its tax base, especially increasing its revenues. The committee carried out public participation and later deliberated the matters which inform our decisions. For instance, Clause 2 of the Finance Bill 2024 is expanding the definition of digital content monetization to include all creative work. The committee noted that not all creative works generate income. Therefore, and in order to align with international best practice, it is actually very necessary to specify that only those generating income are subject to tax. Clause 2, Honorable Speaker, is talking about the definition of software, which includes software and royalties in the definition of software and the definition of royalty. To safeguard the interests of distributors in this sector, the committee decided to delete this proviso and exclude the distribution of software from this definition. Honorable Speaker, there has been a notable change in the global arena in tax administration, where governments or parliaments change tax laws to align with court decisions. I think a case in point is the 7Cs case versus KRA in Kenya, where there was the contestation of the definition of royalties to include softwares. And the most popular one globally is the case of the engineering firm in India over the definition of softwares. We appreciate that in as much as it is improvement in our jurisprudence and improvement in our laws to make law process to align with the decisions of courts, we need to be careful not to abuse the power of law legislation to negate the judgments made by our courts. Clause 4, Honorable Speaker, proposes to reduce the period for claiming deferred realized foreign exchange losses from 5 years to 3 years. The committee supports retaining the current period, allowing businesses to recover foreign exchange losses over 5 years instead of the proposed 3 years, especially during these times of uncertainties in the global market, and especially including the de-dollarization of the markets. For example, we have seen some of our global leaders backing their currencies through gold and not through, for example, the most popular used currencies such as the US dollar. Clause 6B2, Honorable Speaker, proposes to exempt reimbursement of expenses incurred for asset purchasing during official duties by public officers, which was extensively discussed with stakeholders. The committee ultimately decided to remove this amendment that aimed to exclude public officers from taxation on employment of benefits received as reimbursements for asset acquisition. This decision was driven by concerns by members of the public that such exemption would unfairly discriminate against private sector employees and could potentially be abused. As framed on the bill, Honorable Speaker, there is no definition of what these assets are. And therefore, we stand a risk of having public officers buy houses or buy factories, and those factories or houses that they buy from taxpayers' money will not be subject to tax. So the best way would have been to treat the same for public officers, the same with private officers. But Honorable Speaker, if we allow private officers to be exempted from tax on payments made to them for assets, you might find officers being paid in terms of assets just for tax planning and tax avoidance. Clause 8, Honorable Speaker, proposes to repeal the digital service tax and its replacement with a significant economic presence tax at the rate of 30% on 20% deemed profit. This committee acknowledges that digital service providers typically enjoy a higher profit margin due to lower production costs compared to companies with physical presence. Therefore, the adjustment aims to align the deemed profit more closely with what will be expected in those companies if those companies face similar cost structures. This is a revenue enhancement measure to ensure that digital service providers pay their fair share of tax. Additionally, and notably, Honorable Speaker, the committee proposes amending this clause to include a gradual increase in the rate of from 1.5% to 3% and not from 1.5% to 6% as proposed in the bill. And this is to ensure there is fast implementation of this adjustment. Honorable Speaker, this has been one of the most confused clauses that has been to the members of the public. This tax is not on digital content creators. This tax is for these applications, for example, Uber Eats, Jumia, and the tax is imposed on the owners of the platform, not on the consumers or those people making those deliveries, Honorable Speaker. And this has been endorsed by the best practice through OECD countries to have a uniformity globally on taxation around the digital marketplace, Honorable Speaker. On clause 912G, there is the proposed introduction of minimum top-up tax. This committee strongly supports its measure, noting its global adoption in over 60 countries, where many of these key multinational companies operate. Failing to implement this tax in Kenya would undermine the fair application of tax obligations, potentially allowing constituent companies located in Kenya to underpay their share of revenues. This amendment is aligned to the multilateral instruments on profit shifting and base erosion that this House approved a month ago. Again, another very misinterpreted clause. The minimum top-up tax, to explain simply, means where a multinational company operates in Kenya and as a group company, and in the company of their origin, they have a lower tax rate than that of Kenya, then they will be required to pay this minimum top-up tax. And again, this is to align ourselves with best practice. Clause 9, 12H, proposes an introduction of motor vehicle tax at the rate of 2.5% of the value of the vehicle. With this clause, the committee knows the following. 1, Section 3.2 of the Income Tax Act defines what constitutes an income upon which a tax is chargeable under the Act, whereas the proposed motor tax is levied on an asset and not on income as described by the Income Tax Act. The proposal, Honorable Speaker, to cap the levy at 100,000 shillings makes this tax discriminatory and non-progressive, because this essentially means that those motor vehicles that have a value of 4 million shillings and below would have paid the fair tax of 2.5%. But those vehicles that have of higher value of 2.5% would have paid a less commensurate percentage of that motor vehicle tax. The proposal will have adverse effects on the insurance-taking behavior of motor vehicle owners and further lead to negative effects on the insurance sector. Honorable Speaker, notably also, commercial vehicles which are subject to advance tax and would therefore amount to double taxation. We noticed concerns from the members of the public, most especially commercial vehicles, take third-party insurance. Third-party insurance is a flat rate of 7,500 shillings. So if we impose 2.5% on a matatu that, say, is worth 4 million shillings, That means that the motor vehicle tax on that matatu would be 100,000 shillings. And considering that most of them struggle to even raise the 7,500 shillings comprehensive insurance, then that would be quite punitive and would actually even lead to them not taking the regular insurance for their motor vehicles. From the foregoing, the committee recommends therefore the deletion of the proposed motor vehicle tax. Honorable Speaker, on clause 10, the proposal to limit the deductibility of an employee's contributions to a post-retirement medical fund to 10,000 shillings. This committee recommends increasing actually the limit to 15,000 shillings. This is to encourage a saving culture for a post-retirement medical scheme. This is an improvement from our last year's amendment where we introduced the relief, and therefore we really urge this House to adopt this amendment. Honorable Speaker, you will note a concept called black tax, where the reason why majority of Kenyans, especially middle-income earning Kenyans, are struggling, one of them is because they have to support their aging parents. Some of them really contributed their many years of public service to serving the people of this country. So we are therefore providing for an incentive for them that when you are actively in service, please save for your post-retirement medical scheme. And we're saying, when you make this contribution to your post-retirement medical scheme, that contribution will be tax allowable to up to 15,000 shillings a month. And this will really help that when we grow old, the times when parents would rely on their children to support them when they are old, the times when children were seen as an investment needs to end. When someone reaches the age of 18 years, they should be allowed to drive by themselves and support themselves and the family by us during our active lives investing heavily on our retirement. This is not to mean that we don't support our parents, but just saying that let us, all of us are working now, work hard to make sure that we put measures such as this one, saving for our post-retirement medical scheme, so that we do not burden our children with our medical costs when you are old and not working. Clause 12, Honorable Speaker, proposes to introduce the advance pricing agreement. This committee supports a proposal for an advance pricing agreement since it will enhance revenue determination in entities that belong to multinational groups or trade with related persons. Further, this will lead to allowing a seamless implementation of the agreements. The committee recommends enactment of regulations. And I need to emphasize this. The committee recommends Kenya Revenue Authority to enact regulations to address circumstances where KRA cancels advance payment agreements to allow the taxpayer the right to appeal, among other concerns. This proposal is also to align, Honorable Speaker, with our tax laws on international best practice and prevent profits shifting and base erosion. Clause 21D1, Clause 21DJ, Honorable Speaker. The committee endorses the bill's proposal to introduce withholding tax on interest from bonds, notes, or securities with a maturity of less than 3 years. This measure, Honorable Speaker, aims to promote long-term investment and ensure that government revenue from such payments is consistent with other forms of income. Clause 23, Honorable Speaker, proposes subjecting amateur supporting associations to taxation. This committee acknowledges that while the proposal aims to tax these associations, it recommends deleting the proposal to foster investment in the sector and to encourage the nurturing of sporting talent. This decision is intended to incentivize and support the management of youth talents through sporting activities. Honorable Speaker, we have seen, for example, the Talanta initiative. We've seen these athletic camps across the country. So this proposal to introduce taxation on this Talanta, the Talanta Hera initiative, all the athletic camps in this country, we are therefore saying, please, let us allow these sectors to drive, let us support talent, let us support our young people to make their money through talent, through these amateur supporting associations. Clause 25B1, Honorable Speaker, the committee retains the 15% preferential tax rate for the construction of 100 units of affordable housing. This incentive aims to encourage and stimulate investment in the affordable housing sector across the country. Clause 34A1, AA, and AB, the committee proposes to delete the proposed VAT on aircraft spare parts. This decision was considering that many airlines operators in the country provide maintenance and repair services to both international and domestic airlines. Implementing a tax on aircraft spare parts would increase the operational costs for airlines in Kenya, potentially undermining the country's competitiveness as a regional aviation hub. This amendment aims to support the growth in this emerging sector within our country. Clause 34, 35, Honorable Speaker, this is about the provisions under the proposed amendment on the VAT Act. The committee adhered to several guidelines, including zero rating only the most essential consumption items for household and for agricultural inputs, exempting inputs used in the manufacturing of medical services, safeguarding the financial sector by restricting VAT on services, taxing goods and services where only value is added in the production process, and exempting specific inputs to include local industries. Based on this principle, Honorable Speaker, the committee proposes to zero-rate items such as ordinary bread, unleavened bread, gluten-free bread, and inputs on raw materials for manufacturing agricultural and pest control products, agricultural pest control products themselves, and the transportation of sugarcane from farms to milling factories. And Honorable Speaker, the question has been asked, why sugarcane? Why not any other product? And I would like to tell Kenyans that out of all the agricultural products that we have in this country, the most bulky one in terms of weight is sugarcane. And therefore, the largest cost in the value addition on sugar is the transportation of sugarcane, Honorable Speaker. Additionally, the proposal is, we have proposed zero rating of locally assembled and manufactured mobile phones, among others. Honorable Speaker, this House made a decision last year to zero-rate local assembly of mobile phones. As a result, we have seen institutions such as the African Device Assemblers of Kenya assembling a total of 400,000 phones every month. They have created employment for over 1,000 Kenyans. We are now, in fact, Honorable Speaker, they cannot satisfy the demand on the supply of these phones in this country. We are telling Kenyans, it is possible to manufacture our things here. We do not have to import these things from other countries. We can support our manufacturing and make sure that we consume and use only those products that are locally manufactured. The committee further recommends exempting several products from VAT, including the issuance of credit and debit cards, foreign exchange transactions, sanitary towels, diapers, and services to local film agents. Clause 39, Honorable Speaker, of the bill proposes the removal of provision granting relief on excess duty to manufacturers of accessible goods and providers of internet data services. The committee recognizes that excess duty, similar to VAT, considers input and output tax for manufacturing of accessible goods. Removing, therefore, Section 14 of the excess duty would prevent manufacturers from deducting excess duty, thereby potentially raising production costs and necessarily leading to higher prices to consumers. This deletion aims to safeguard Kenyans from increased prices of essential commodities. Honorable Speaker, it is East African community practice that excess duty on inputs become a tax allowable expense to manufacturers. And the risk of passing this Section 14 as proposed in the bill would mean that we would potentially make it cheaper for someone to go and manufacture in a different country and then import into this country duty-free. And therefore, this committee was very conscious on the need to protect our manufacturers and make sure we buy Kenya and build Kenya. Clause 39 proposes the removal of the provision granting relief on excess duty on accessible goods. I have explained that. Clause 42, Honorable Speaker, addresses excess duty on goods where the committee is guided by the following principal criteria: exempting goods from locally manufactured goods, exempting products to prevent increases in consumer prices, improving the administration of excess duty for ease. Based on this principle, therefore, the committee recommends the following: exempting vegetable oils, fertilized eggs, and clinker from excess duty. Honorable Speaker, I would like to explain what the difference is between these eggs. We have what we call table eggs. Table eggs is the ready-to-eat eggs that we eat here at our restaurant or our homes. We have incubated eggs of what we call fertilized eggs. These are eggs that are ready to hatch. These are the ones that give us, for example, the one-day-old chicks. Honorable Speaker, as a poultry farmer myself, I attempted, when I was buying my one-day-old chicks, I was told that I needed to wait for 4 months before I got the one-day-old chicks, Honorable Speaker. This means that there is a great, the supply of fertilized eggs in this country is much lower than that of table eggs. However, we need to protect our eggs from imported eggs from other markets. Therefore, a few years ago, if you remember, Kenyans were eating eggs from Uganda at the expense of eggs that are laid by our own chicken here. It is plausible. It defeats any reason why we should allow an egg laid in a different country to land into a country at a cheaper price than eggs that are being made by our farmers here. So we have therefore introduced, Honorable Speaker, imposition of excise duty on imported table eggs, on imported onions, and on imported potatoes, so that we protect our onion, our poultry, and our potato farmers, especially in Molo and Nyandarua. Based on this criteria, Honorable Speaker, the proposal to exempt them from excise duty, vegetable oils, and fertilized eggs from incubation, amongst other things, is what we use under this consideration, Honorable Speaker. Further in, keeping with the tax system's predictability, the committee proposes to maintain the current rates on excise duty on imported motorcycle, plastic, onions, potatoes, among others. And again, I want to explain here that excise duty has been proposed only on imported, completely assembled motorcycles. We have had local capacity of our manufacturers assembling our own motorcycles. Let us ride motorcycles that are assembled in Kenya. When we export these jobs to China, when we import these completely locally assembled goods from China, it means three things. One, we are exporting our jobs to another country. Two, we are eroding our foreign exchange, because once we do those importation of those goods, we have to use our dollars. And that is where it took us last year with the titulator of our Kenya shillings going to as low as 167 shillings, Honorable Speaker. Three, we are certain of the quality of that particular product, because you can go to that plant, you can go to that factory and ascertain the quality of those, Speaker, in addition to creating employment to our young men and women in this country. With this regards, Honorable Speaker, to excise duty in services, the committee was guided by the need to keep the consumer prices for certain services low and then to ensure stability in terms of the rate of excise duty. Based on these criteria, the committee proposes to maintain the prevailing rate on money transfer services by banks and financial institutions and money transfer services by cellular phone providers. Honorable Speaker, you've heard the popular Tuma na ya kutoa. So we want to make sure that that Tuma na ya kutoa is not increased so that we retain the current rates that is on our cellular mobile transfer services. Clause 44, Honorable Speaker, proposes an increase in the import declaration fee to highlight a reduction from 30.5% to 2.5% in the Finance Act of 2023. This resulted in a significant revenue loss of 10 billion shillings, impacting the implementation of 2023-24 budget. And this, therefore, Honorable Speaker, you have seen in a record 2 supplemented budgets that have led to a very huge cut on our expenditures. And this is because one of the decisions that we made was a reduction of IDF last year from 3.5 to 2.5% led to a revenue loss of 10 billion shillings. Honorable Speaker, clause 45 and 48 proposes the introduction of an eco levy to mitigate environmental damage and pollution caused by imported finished products in Kenya. The committee emphasizes that this levy should exclusively apply to imported finished products, therefore safeguarding local manufacturers who are already adhering to what's called the extended producer principle. Regarding to a stakeholder feedback and to mitigate price impacts on essential goods, however, the committee recommends excluding motorcycles, bicycle tires, wheelchairs, 3-wheel motorized vehicles, which you probably know as tuk-tuks, and wheelbarrows from this levy. Additionally, the committee proposes reducing the eco levy for select finished goods. These adjustments are intended to balance environmental protection with consumer affordability and local manufacturing interests, Honorable Speaker. Especially on the area of e-waste, Honorable Speaker. whatever products, these products, when you import them, when we import that phone, one day that phone will die ultimately. So we are saying, let us have a fund through the restoration fund which provides resources to ensure at the end of the life of that product, there is money that is used to restore, to either reuse, recycle, or restore the impact of that product to the economy, Honorable Speaker. And for example, how that fund is already working. Now, if you are doing mineral exploration in this country, and you go and dig up when you're doing your quarry or your mineral exploration, you are required to pay a bond so that when now you finish your exploration, there is money to restore that land to its original state, either, for example, by converting it into a dam or filling it up. So this is similar to that. And you've seen this work in other countries, where when at the end of use of a phone or a computer, those phones are taken, those computers are taken, and they are either used or recycled, Honorable Speaker. And it's also important to mention that the responsibility of the payment of this eco levy is not on the consumer. It is on the manufacturer in that country of origin. And this, again, is in line with best practice. It has been introduced in Tanzania, it has been introduced in several countries, and most of these larger manufacturers are more than willing to pay this eco levy to make sure that the products that they produce at the end of the life of that product, they're able to be collected, to be reused or recycled to prevent the eroding of our environment, Honorable Speaker. Clause 47 introduces the Export and Investment Promotion Levy to address declining exports and increase imports, especially for locally manufactured goods. The company's objective is to safeguard the local manufacturing sector against unfair trade practices, enhance its competitiveness, and foster a sustainable and inclusive export environment. The Export and Investment Promotion Levy is expected to have several impacts on the manufacturing sector. One, it will support local manufacturing, aiming to increase the sector's contribution to GDP from 7% to 20% by 2027, seeking to level the playing field for local manufacturers struggling against cheaper imports, reducing over-reliance on foreign goods and services. And this levy will generate revenue to facilitate the development of the manufacturing sector and incentivize investments by local, micro, small, and medium enterprises. Based on this course, Honorable Speaker, the committee proposes imposing the Export and Investment Promotion Levy on articles such as leather products and imported footwear, denatured ethyl alcohol, ceramic sinks, and wash basins, among others. Additionally, the committee supports stakeholders' proposal to exempt craft liner, uncoated craft paper, and ballast from the levy. Regarding the motorcycles, Honorable Speaker, the committee suggests implying the levy only, again, on fully built imported motorcycles. This measure aims to design a proper and promote local manufacturing, enhance competitiveness, and support sustainable economic growth in our great beloved country, Kenya. Clause 51 and Clause 57 proposes the integration of electronic tax system, ETIMS, with data management and reporting system. The committee acknowledges the implementation challenges on ETIMS, especially on our small-scale farmers, or subsistence farmers, and microfinances. Therefore, our report proposes that we exempt those farmers and those small businesses with a turnover less than 1 million shillings from this registration, and impose that responsibility on the traders, so that they use what in tax terms they call reverse invoicing. To address this issue, Honorable Speaker, the committee is guided by the international jurisprudence process called de minimis non current lex. In terms of the law does not concern itself with trifles. The law should not concern itself with trivial matters that would hinder even tax administration. And this, Honorable Speaker, is why we are proposing exemption of subsistence farmers and micro enterprises with a gross turnover of below 1 million shillings from this requirement. This exemption aims to facilitate their participation in the form of business transactions without the burden of electronic invoicing requirements. Furthermore, Honorable Speaker, the committee suggests to KRA to ensure guidelines on this operationalization is addressed effectively. These guidelines would provide clarity and ensure smooth implementation while supporting the integration of small-scale farmers and micro enterprises into the formal economy. Clause 56, Honorable Speaker, addresses the issue of agency notices. This is aimed to resolve ambiguities regarding their validity. The committee recognizes the necessity to provide a mechanism to lift agency notices in Kenya where taxes have been fully paid pursuant to a court order. This provision seeks to ensure clarity and fairness in tax enforcement practices, allowing the timely removal of agency notices once obligation has been met through a judicial process. By establishing clear guidelines, Honorable Speaker, for lifting agency notices under these circumstances, the proposal aims to uphold legal compliance while safeguarding Kenya's rights and maintaining the integrity of our tax administration. Clause 61 proposes the removal of restrictions that require owners of affordable housing units to obtain prior written consent from the Affordable Housing Board before selling their units. The committee supports this amendment, citing the concerns from the public that this provision on the Affordable Housing Act infringes on the constitutional right to property. By advocating for the removal of this requirement, the committee seeks to uphold property rights and ensure that homeowners have the freedom to manage and dispose their affordable housing units without unnecessary bureaucratic handles. Clause 63 proposes granting KRA access to personal data. The committee has raised concerns that this proposal does not meet the constitutional threshold outlined in Articles 31C and D of the Constitution of Kenya. Additionally, the committee notes that Section 51 of the Data Protection Act specifies conditions under which exemptions might be applicable. Moreover, Honorable Speaker, Section 60 of the Tax Procedures Act empowers the commissioner or authorized officers with a warrant to access any necessary data for administering tax laws. These considerations, therefore, shows the need for careful alignment with constitutional and legal provisions regarding privacy and data protection in implementing this proposal. The decline in levy collection, Honorable Speaker, continues to impact on highways, urban and rural roads. Recent heavy rains and flooding like El Nino have again further damaged our roads, and therefore they need to provide more resources, Honorable Speaker, through the appropriations to ensure that we have sufficient resources on the repair of our roads, and especially the low-volume seal roads. Mr. Speaker, exploring innovative approaches such as targeted initiatives, simplified tax processes, and enhanced taxpayer education can encourage voluntary compliance and broaden participation in the formal tax system. Bringing more Kenyans into the taxpayer fold, we align our tax revenue collection with economic expansion, enabling us to finance crucial investments in infrastructure, social programs, and sustainable development. Mr. Speaker, addressing these issues proactively and maintaining effective tax policies, we strive to increase our tax revenue collection in line with our economic potential. This, Honorable Speaker, will strengthen our fiscal position, allowing for investment in key sectors such as social welfare programs and infrastructure development, fostering sustainable economic growth to benefit all Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, as we deliberate the Finance Bill of 2024, it is important to actually prioritize measures that will effectively expand our tax base and ensure revenue generation. This may involve innovative tax policy approaches such as incentivizing compliance, simplifying tax procedures, and overcoming barriers that hinder our revenue growth. Honorable Speaker, there are other two proposals that are very critical in this economy. One of them is the amendment on excise duty on cigarettes, where we were applying preferential rates per centiliter to filtered and unfiltered cigarettes. Honorable Speaker, we witnessed heartbreaking confessions of victims of throat cancer after 25 years of smoking. And this is because we were saying they started with the unfiltered cigarettes, then went to the filtered cigarette and spoke for 25 years. And as a result, Honorable Speaker, there has been demonstration globally that there is a direct relationship between cigarette smoking and many forms of cancer, especially throat and lung cancer. It has been demonstrated globally that changing tax regime on or changing taxation on cigarettes actually impact the consumption of those services and has a subsequent impact on reduction of cancer cases. Honorable Speaker, on alcoholic beverages, Honorable Speaker, the proposed amendment to shift from taxation by volume to taxation by alcohol content is also a great welcome a policy idea and aligns with best practice global, Honorable Speaker. This means that alcoholic drinks that have higher alcohol content will have a higher excise duty than those alcoholic drinks that have lower alcohol content. This, Honorable Speaker, will not just make higher content alcohol more expensive, but most importantly, in the fight against illicit brews, ensure there is safer alcohol available to those that want to take alcohol. Because, Honorable Speaker, we have accepted as a country there are those that want to take and there are those that don't want to take. So those that want to take need to be given access to safe and affordable and healthy, and make sure that those others that do illicit, Honorable Speaker, are discouraged. As we robustly, Honorable Speaker, engage on the Convention about the Finance Bill and critique it, it must be realized that this bill aims to correct around 346 billion shillings only from a proposed 3.9 trillion shillings. We therefore request this House, our departmental committees and our oversight committees and Kenyans in the public to interrogate the expenditure side of this budget as they are interrogating the financing side. This, Honorable Speaker, will lead to a more robust budget-making process, reduce or prevent budgeted corruption, maintain fiscal discipline in the use of our resources by our executive, Honorable Speaker. Because one of the credit cases we face, Honorable Speaker, is the trust deficit on what this will be used. And this House, in our oversight roles, can do a great job in reducing that trust deficit, in ensuring that the taxes paid by hand-earned Kenyans are spent correctly for the success, for the prosperity of the great public of the Republic of Kenya. Without, Honorable Speaker, I beg to support.
You beg to move.
Without, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move.
And who is seconding you?
Honorable Speaker, I request my very able Vice Chair, CPA Ambassador Benjamin Langat, the MP for the great people of Ainamoi in Kericho County, to second.